Haynes King comes into this game at 64.5% completion percentage, 15 TDs, 4 picks. We've got a running back at Jamal Haynes, 376 yards, 5.8 per carry. Another back at 5.1. So they're running the ball pretty effectively. He's at 5.1. Trey Cooley. Of course, the conversation about Georgia Tech goes back a few years with Jeff Collins leaving and him trying to turn over a roster from the triple option attack. And he was unsuccessful. And now Brent Key steps on the field mid last season as an offensive line coach, and they start playing instantly better football. Is there anything that you've seen out of Georgia Tech?
I watched parts of the Bowling Green game live, but also then obviously watched it for State of the U. Excuse me, the film article forecast would be up tomorrow at 8 Eastern. But that was a rough game. It started off really well. King threw a pretty big play action touchdown early. It looked really good. And then it seemed like it just sort of fell apart for Tech. Like, I don't know exactly what was going on there. They have some big play threats. They have a guy with over 10 receptions, which is usually like the litmus test at this point in the season. By halfway point, give or take, you start looking at, do you have 10 catches or more? And then by the time that it's the end of the season, I would say 20 catches or more, you can kind of hold statistical data to them. Some guy has 4 catches, I'm not going to care what yards per catch he had, right? But they have a guy with 18.9 yards a catch. So if that guy gets a hold of you, and then their number 2 has 14.9, right? Miami's highest yards per catch on a guy with 10 or more is Restrepo with 14.8. So they have a big play, 2 big play threats at receiver. And King is averaging like 8.9 yards an attempt. Which yards per attempt is usually kind of the gauge I like to use. And then obviously people will say interceptions don't matter. Interceptions matter. So, as a coach, I always thought interceptions mattered a lot. That's a shout out to Marcus Moeller if he's out there, listening. Yeah, your interceptions mattered. It's a joke. He did throw a lot of interceptions, but he can take a joke. He threw, King's thrown 4 interceptions. I think 2 in the last game. That's rough, but I don't think that's going to hinder him from wanting to go deep. Cam Kinchins, somebody just said this. He's supposed to be back. That I'm excited about that. Obviously, that was a real downer on that game. You're like all hyped up, ready. I was going out, going to Durham, going out. Then you're like, well, damn, I'm sitting here on the phone hitting refresh while I'm sitting there in the car. Like, is he all right? Is he all right? Is he all right? You're just waiting to hear something. So that, that was definitely obviously a way bigger downer for him than me. But, you're kind of a downer. But I mean, Parrish is averaging 7.9 yards a carry. Everyone always says that the next, favorite player on the team or whatever is always the backup quarterback. Well, I don't think anybody wants to see that guy right now. But the backup running backs, but Henry Parrish is 7.9 yards a carry. I mean, that's a shitload of yardage, right? Especially for a guy whose speed wasn't supposed to be his thing. So, I think Miami has the ability, I think, to offset some of the big plays, but Tech's big play ability, it'll be something to look at, especially Kitchens has got to have a little ring rust on him.
CJ says that he's tired of seeing the defensive ends drop into coverage because I'm something in the backs out of the backfield are hurting us.
Yeah. So somebody had asked on Twitter to go with this. That's perfect. What I would do if I was trying to attack Miami's defense as an offensive coordinator, and without a doubt, trying to get the linebackers running with my and those drop defensive ends running with my running back is absolutely what I would do. And Tech likes to put Christian Leary in the backfield, and get him into different situations, right? He was kind of like a swing RPO sort of guy. He's kind of done getting pitches, running the ball, being thrown out there, running a wheel. I mean, he's going to wind up being the guy to keep your eye on is going to be Leary. Like, how many different things is he going to be able to do? in order to really just be kind of a pain in the ass, especially when you're going to try to play. If you're really going to try to play man with the 2 inside linebackers, they're going to have to really keep an eye on what's going on with him and where he's lined up, because that'll be an issue. Maui Goa, those are some big dudes, both of them. And the linebacker is a thick dude. It's hard to be that thick and run, with a guy that is very shifty like that. Where did he play? He was at Alabama before, I think, Leary. Like that. Nick Saban's recruiting speed. So, you look at that and you wonder, damn, that's a bad matchup, and so if you that is what I would attack, if I was them. I would be trying to see, are they in man, and a lot of times you figure that out based on motion, right? So you run a few motions a few times and see who bumps to where. You got guys up top. That's their job, is to kind of write it down. Okay, he's bumping here, you're bumping there. We see the rotation. A couple of years ago, Georgia Tech saw a good rotation. They would run fly sweep, fake it, and then give split zone back the other way. They busted a couple touchdowns on it, right? That's what those guys are doing. They're throwing the first few out in motion just to see who rotates, right? Who moves? Do they move at all? Do they just bump over, right? Okay, so they're in zone. They just look like man. You're checking a lot of that kind of stuff that way. Does your D line move with it? Because sometimes you'll bump guys down. Kick to a 3 when the tight end goes into motion and settles up. So a lot of that's just, how does that work? If I'm Georgia Tech, I'm putting Leary in motion, seeing who follows him and who doesn't on the first couple snaps. And after that, just trying to find ways to get it to them if they're going to stay in man with linebackers, or they're going to have a defensive end cover them. Good luck.
I know, since you coach and played, I think the level of respect that you have for these guys is different than the typical fan, and the respect for the opponent is a little bit difficult, because you have to actually, instead of just sitting at home going, well, this team's a 3-touchdown favorite, why are they not blowing them out, kind of thing, that the athletes have to actually go out there and compete. And so is there, when you watch Georgia Tech, do you expect this to be a competitive game?
Yeah. I mean, I think everything that the players have been saying in the media, I don't think it's lip service. I think what Miami's players have been saying is true. They're a good team. They had a shitty game. And you also don't want to look back as a player and go, well, last year was I shitty because I lost to Middle Tennessee? Oh, like that's another thing that kind of comes up in your head. But losing one game doesn't mean you can't step up and win another. I mean, one thing I'll give Manny Diaz his time in Miami was he would lose some stupid game that you couldn't believe and then come back and either win or have a great game against somebody else. It was like hitting, the Men in Black button thing, right? And they would just forget and they'd come out and win some game. I was like, they're going to lose this thing. Nope. They came back and beat Florida State by a lot, or whatever happened after losing somebody you wouldn't expect. So again, it really isn't any given Saturday sort of thing, because of its college, and you never know what these guys have been doing all week, and what was this off week like, and who's hurt and who's banged up. I mean, Cristobal's not going to tell you that. Who's playing, he's not going to give that away. And people just see certain things that work. I know Georgia Tech was really excited about playing Miami in 2020, and then the game got canceled because they saw how bad Miami was against gap runs. And they were like, well, we're ready to just gap run it down their throat. And then game got canceled, right? And some people are better at scheming to different looks. Some guys can really scheme against an even front. And some guys can really scheme against odd fronts, and they're not as strong other ways, And I know Georgia Tech's been really good against, like, NC State's 33. Stack. They've been really good against the stack. Not as good against the 4-2-5, right? But they found ways where teams that really roll those safeties down to kind of pick at that. So it always winds up, an interesting kind of cat and mouse sort of thing. I mean, they're obviously playing a lot better of offense. They had a little bit of a blip, but, for the most part, I mean, shoot, they're scoring. I want to say it's, let's see, I got the number right here. Over a touchdown more, I think, per game this year than they did last year, which moved them from 124th to 49th in offense. So they're scoring more. Miami's just scoring a hell of a lot more than they did last year. So, which is fun. It's fun for somebody like me that loves to see a lot of points. I was a defensive coach for a long time, but I can't stand those Iowa 7-6ers. I want to see, the old Mike Leach UCLA game that was 63-61 or whatever it was. It's more fun to me. So, or that USC Colorado game from the other day, that's more fun to me. So I think, yeah, when you look as a coaching mindset and you know some of the players and you know some of the coaches, and you met them and stuff, you have a different viewpoint on what it's like and what an opponent does and how hard it is to win a football game.
Georgia Tech and Miami getting together on the ACC Network Saturday night, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. We got Justin Tatavio here from State of the U. Get on over there and check out Justin's work, and what in particular is already posted or about to be posted by you over there.
Yes, there's a film forecast will be up, which is like the weekly kind of preview. It usually comes up Thursdays at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time. And so that'll have SP plus type stuff. It'll have yards per play, points per play, turnovers, penalties, anything, I call it the Doppler, right? Good shitty pun. A weather pun for all the things I think go into a win, right? So, and then I have a joke that's the Josh Gaddis honorary time of possession award, because that doesn't mean anything at all, right? Like you can hold it for 40 minutes and lose, or 4 minutes and win, or whatever. So who wins that one? But that's important. And usually in that section will be something about kicking. So whether it's the 40 yards per return, or it's missing field goals or extra points, or maybe somebody's just got a punt blocked recently or something along those lines, that kind of goes into the Doppler section. And then it's usually their offense, what works against it. If you look at the State of the U Twitter, I usually put up on sometime in the middle of the week. This time, because of the off week, it was Sunday, I think, a play that I think could work. What would work against Miami, and then for Miami, what would work against whatever they're going to see defensively. And so, kind of what's open, to use Dub Maddox from the R4 series, to use his terminology, as what's open, right? So what would work? Could be a run, could be a pass. Sometimes it's just an RPO tag, against those rotating safeties or something like that. A lot of that stuff will work. For Georgia Tech this week, the big fear play is that post-snap RPO. When they pull and they throw to Leary late down the line, I think that's kind of going to be an issue, especially when we had talked about the linebackers covering. That's a late throw, right? Like, and it's borderlining on being against the rules. But what's open against Georgia Tech, clearly Bowling Green love crossing routes. So, being able to throw shallow cross or mesh, or, any kind of like over route that switches up at late, I think that'll work against Tech. And again, if I was Georgia Tech and I'm trying to do something against Miami, I'm hitting the flats all day and making them cover the running back, and putting different, even if the running back they can't catch, I'm putting anybody else back there. So Leary in the backfield, forcing you to cover him out of the backfield and switch what you want to do, right? To make you uncomfortable. If DC wants to play man with the linebacker and you make him stop, it's uncomfortable for everybody there.
Especially mid-season, when it's difficult to change much of anything. How much, and I'm speaking in generalities because every team does something different, I'm sure, to a certain extent, does a team like Miami scout its opponent and then look at, let's say, there was somewhat a surprising result last week. Bowling Green defeats Georgia Tech. Okay, what did Bowling Green do? And what were they? You mentioned the crossing routes. Well, everybody's running crossing routes, but if there's something that Bowling Green's doing that we don't necessarily have in our playbook, but we have things similar to it, or do we actually throw in a play or two, not too much, but a play or two that's something that we're not doing currently, but we think we can teach in a session because we think we could take advantage of something?
Yeah, you could. I mean, you're right that it's a little late to keep putting in too much. I'm a proponent of, like, this point, man, it should be in, and you could put tags and wrinkles on it, but the basis of everything you're doing has got to be in probably by now. Like, this is the game where it's all going to come out, right? Like, saving this play, like, that's not as real as people want to believe that it is. You're going to see tags off of it, and okay, they've been running shallow cross. The outside receiver always goes vertical. All of a sudden, he's starting to post, or he's digging, or they're getting 2 digs or something. All right, those little things are post corner. Those little things will be added in. But, I don't think anything too crazy. I think, I was watching a friend of mine's film because I was out sick for a couple days. So I was at home doing nothing. And he sent me every single one of their games. And I said to self scout for him, right? Kind of like third party self scout. And I was watching it and I said, one thing that you're doing is getting too cute. Like, you don't have to stop running a play and call something else the next play. I mean, if X play is working, run the damn thing again. Like, you really don't have to change plays every single call. The idea, like when you're playing like a Madden or something and you keep calling the same play, shit, if it works, it works. I think I was coaching some, out in Oregon, we ran the same play like 8 out of 9 times for 70 yards and a touchdown. The one time we didn't call it, we got stopped. I said, screw it, go back to the other play. We ran it again. And then we just drove it down the field. They never fixed it. It's really hard in high school, especially. I don't even care what level you're at, even the, Texas, Georgia, blah, 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 New Jersey, wherever you are. It's really hard to make changes on the field. You can change a play call and you can try to get some kind of other front in. But what the guys are seeing is what matters. It's your OODA loop, right? It's what you're seeing, what your eyes can compute and observe, orient, decide next. And that's what matters. And so you're not fixing that on the field. So call the same damn thing over and over again. Yeah, so you've got mesh, and you're going to call, those are your double crossers over the middle. They tag hands, right? And let's say, you've got an option route to the one outside receiver, and the back's going to keep swinging. And all of a sudden, you just tell the back, all right, you've got the wheel, and the outside receiver, you've got the post, and now you've got post wheel out there. And yeah, the quarterback's read changes, but every 10 other people, nothing changes, right? Like, you've given him a tag. Instead of having a post as an option, nope, it's the only option now. And, the wheel was an op. Nope, it's no more reading it. Just run the damn wheel. And now you're going post wheel mesh as opposed to the mesh being the first part or whatever. Like, the quarterback has to know that. And you'd hope the quarterback's the smartest guy in the field. And after that, everybody else is doing the same damn thing pretty much anyway. So what's the difference, right? And so I think you can manipulate in a way what you're doing without changing a whole lot. And don't be afraid to call the same shit 3 times in a row. I think everyone thinks it's too obvious. It's not. I mean, they're thinking the same, it's all reverse psychology, right? Like, they're thinking they'll never call that damn thing 3 times. Why not? Right? If it works, it works. Run it till they stop. Right? I think TCU ran power read, inverted veer power read a long time ago when Andy Dalton was the quarterback, like over and over and over again in some game, and beat like an Oklahoma State or somebody, just gashing one play over and over again. Yeah, why not? If they're not going to adjust, just keep doing it. And so people get too cute and they don't call the same play over and over again like they should. Look, Bobby Petrino did it to Miami a long time ago. He had Harry Douglas, and I can't think of the other receiver's name. Actually, Brian Braun might have been the damn quarterback, and he was calling the same play over and over again. I mean, he called shallow cross like 1,000 times. Until they figure out how to cover it, why not? Right? I mean, they got to call a timeout. You're still not going to fix that in a timeout. That's going to have to be a halftime thing. Maybe you could fix that at a quarter break if the offense is still out there. It's hard to fix shit in the middle of a game.
Yeah, if the players that are the primary focal point of that game, of that play, are that much better than the guys that they're matched up against, that it's being executed that well, then I would think that, if you've got a mismatch, you've got a mismatch.
Right. And Dub Maddox calls it capped, right? Coverage, alignment, personnel. So I'm going to run a fade. Mark Richt did this against UVA a few years ago. He just kept running a fade into guys that were like 12 yards off the ball. That's stupid. The route should break down and come back to a comeback or a hitch, right? Why are you running a vertical route into a guy 12 yards deep? That's the dumbest thing you can do. So Dub would say that that's coverage. That's taken away by coverage. The guy could suck. It doesn't matter. You better be – the difference between him and you better be monumental for you to win that if a guy's 12 yards deep on a fade. But if the guy's pressed, coverage is there, alignment's there, because you want the guy within 7 yards of the hard deck. Now the question is personnel. So sure, if the best cover corner in all of the NFL's on me, I'm not going to beat him deep probably, right? But if just a regular old Georgia Tech corner is on me and I'm allegedly this great wide receiver, well, we should be able to beat him with the P in personnel. So it all works on that capped coverage alignment personnel. Obviously, if a guy's 3 yards off and inside leverage, I can't run a slant into him, right? That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. So that would be the alignment in a sense, because he's inside shade, right? And giving me the CA, even if he's not as good. So capped and uncapped is a big one, for in regards to what's open. And that coverage alignment personnel is big. Right. If you've got a guy that you can beat, just keep throwing me the damn deep ball. Eventually, I've got to catch one of them. If you're going to play me press, Colby Young's getting played press man. He has to win one of those deep balls eventually. He's like 6'6".
Because I think we all grew up thinking that every pass play was this wide receiver runs this route, this wide receiver, it's all drawn up and they're running it out and they're running across and regardless of what the defense is doing. Well, all you have to do is start watching football and you see that's not the case, that there's a lot of communication between wide receiver and quarterback in terms of what they're seeing and whether they should break off the route or do whatever. And that obviously comes with a lot of reps between quarterback and wide receiver core so that they're on the same page. So they're seeing what they need to see. Otherwise, there's a lot of mistakes that can come from that.
Well, and people were much more rigid in the Bill Walsh West Coast, right? It was very rigid. The steps were aligned. It's got to be thrown right to this exact spot at this time and all that. It was very rigid back then. But I think, when Mike Leach and Hal Mummy decided we don't have the same guys that everybody else does, we got to let these guys just play ball. And I think that became more sandlot football or 3-on-3 pickup basketball sort of mentality of why are we hindering people? Let's make this a little more fluid and a little more open. And, the old stories of Mike Leach where the quarterback would say, well, I tried to go to the first read. And he was like, I don't care who the first read is. Just throw the damn guy who's open. Like, why aren't you just finding the guy who's open? Easier said than done. But, that's why Phil Longo's now at Wisconsin has a straight drop. That way you can see the whole field. If you drop this way, you're only seeing one side of the field. You kind of cut that side off of you, right? That's only the third read. Well, if I drop straight back and I know I'm reading the safety, now I can at least get to the left side too. And I'm not cutting half the field off. So even the old Dennis Erickson straight drop, at least when he was at UNC, I haven't really seen much of Wisconsin, but when I would go to a lot of stuff with him in UNC, that's how he was doing
it. Good stuff with Justin DeTavio. Check out his work at State of the U. We're here every Wednesday night with all of you talking Miami football, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Make it on back. Some of you have joined us since we started. Obviously, you can watch the beginning and watch us all the way through once this video posts, which should be immediately. Right, Justin, anything else you wanted to hit on tonight?
No, we covered most of it. Somebody had asked on Twitter about when you have less talent, what are we seeing out there? I think some of the teams with, obviously Miami has a higher blue chip ratio than Georgia Tech. So what do you find? You've got to find that. I used to pick on 2 players a game, right? So if I thought, man, that defensive end on that side is soft, I'm going to kick the crap out of that guy. I'm going to read him on inside zone going away from him. I'm going to run split zone and kick him out. When we run our trap game, that's the guy we're going to kick all the way out to the sideline and blindside him. We're going to throw a screen over his head. Then we're going to come right back and make him try to pass rush. We were just going to abuse one guy over and over and over again. So we would really pick on a 5 technique and figure that guy out. When I was at one school here in North Carolina, we were clearly not as talented. We picked on a 4-star player. I think he plays at Oregon. Like, we picked on him over and over because he was just playing with pure talent and no football sense. And it was like, man, we could pull on this guy and just run right past him because he's going to scream upfield every single time and do crazy stuff. He's just trying to make a big play. He definitely picked 6 us on a screen, but that was tough. But, we were trying to call the screen right at him, and he just jumped up, no kidding, in the air like 30-something inches and just picked the ball off with one hand, ran it back for a touchdown. But then we came right back at him, and we ran at him again. We kicked him a few times. We read him. So I think when the person who asked about, having less talent and beating somebody. I do think you do it with kicking. I think you do it with culture. And I think that you do it with finding someone to pick on. So you find that player. Maybe it's a guard that's just, man, he doesn't help the center at all, right? He's weak. In Casino, he said you got to find the weak dealer, right? Who picks their cards up too high. Find that guy. Who's the guy that you see tips every damn play? Who's the guy that is scared shitless that the throw is going over their head, right? Miami's had those guys, those corners in the past that you could tell were scared the minute that ball left the hand. Like, oh shit, it's me, right? And I remember playing offensive line thinking, damn, they called that play right behind my ass. They know they want to see if I can do it, right? Like, yeah, and I want to throw a ball right over your head and see if you'll actually make a play on it. Especially with if Kitchens isn't 100%, can't play the whole game, and they've got to bump guys out of position they're uncomfortable with, pick on them. If you've got young defensive tackle, that's the guy I'm going to abuse the whole game. Find you a young defensive tackle, pick on him. Find you the backup center, pick on him, right? So that to me, the less talented teams, if you're really smart, you find somebody to pick on. You just abuse the crap out of that poor guy and, make him call mom later and ask for a transfer.